Liam, your fiancée, she's a con artist. This whole wedding, it's a trap to hurt you.
Right here, right in the middle of the moment, my brother was taking the hand of the woman of his life, while my parents were glowing with perfect happiness, and our entire world seemed to be wrapped in a flawless shell. My husband, Liam, the most logical man I'd ever known, a surgeon who always kept a cool head on the line between life and death, squeezed my wrist under the table. The grip was ice cold, not a gesture of affection. It was a warning. He leaned close to my ear, his breath sharp, and uttered 5 words that would forever change my family's life. 5 words that ripped apart the velvet curtain of deception and exposed a truth more horrifying than any nightmare I could have imagined. He said, "We have to get out of here." I froze, about to turn and ask him what the hell he was talking about, but Liam's grip tightened. His eyes weren't on me. They were glued to the bride, my new sister-in-law, Serafina. And then he whispered again, his voice laced with a deadly urgency. "Don't make a scene. Don't scream. The woman your brother just said his vows to, she's not a common con artist. We're in a nest of vipers, and we are in real danger." Have you ever had that feeling? That prickling sensation on your skin when a smile looks too perfect? A sweetness so artificial it makes you sick to your stomach? A deep gut feeling? A small but persistent voice screaming at you that something is completely, utterly wrong, even when all the evidence in front of you says otherwise? We're taught to be polite, to be trusting, to ignore those silly gut feelings. But what if I told you that very instinct, that very doubt you tried to suppress, is the most powerful weapon you have to protect yourself and the people you love? The story I'm about to tell isn't just a juicy family drama. It's a survival lesson for the modern world, where the most dangerous predators don't bear fangs and claws, but charming smiles and sweet promises. It is my family's journey from the height of naive trust to the abyss of a meticulously calculated conspiracy. If you believe intuition is real, or if you've ever ignored it and paid a heavy price, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Because by the end of this video, you won't just believe in your gut. You'll learn how to sharpen it into a weapon. And it all started 3 days ago, in a place where people believe money can buy anything, including happiness. The Hamptons. It all started 3 days before the vows were exchanged, in a place where even the air seemed scented with money and sea salt. The estate belonging to Serafina's family, or rather, what she claimed was her family's, was a sprawling piece of prime real estate in Montauk, the Hamptons. It was a massive white mansion with Grecian columns and a lush green lawn that ran right down to a private beach. When Liam and I drove up, my brother Ethan was already waiting on the steps. He looked like a different person, no longer the tech entrepreneur buried in his work, but a young man in love, his smile as bright as the July sun reflecting off the Atlantic. And then, Serafina stepped out from behind the door. I have to admit, she was perfect. Her beauty wasn't sharp or distant, but incredibly warm and inviting. She wore a simple cream-colored maxi dress, her golden hair loosely pinned up as if casually tossed by the sea breeze. She rushed to hug me, a tight, sincere embrace. "Chloe, you're here," she exclaimed. "You have no idea how much Ethan has told me about you. I can't wait to see your latest designs." I was stunned. I had only mentioned my new project to Ethan on the phone once. Her skill didn't stop there. She complimented my mother Carol's silk scarf. an item Mom had bought from a small shop on a trip to Italy years ago. Then she turned to my father, David, a notoriously tough venture capitalist. "Mr. Reynolds," she said with a sparkling gaze, "Ethan told me you have a collection of 18th century nautical compasses. I've always been fascinated by how old world sailors navigated the globe using nothing but magnetic fields and the stars." My father, who rarely showed enthusiasm for strangers, immediately lit up. He began talking passionately about his hobby, and Serafina listened intently, occasionally asking astonishingly intelligent questions. In less than 10 minutes, she had won over my entire family. Even Liam was charmed. He admitted she was truly graceful. But then, the first cracks began to appear, tiny, like hairline fractures in perfect porcelain. That afternoon, I saw Serafina speaking to a groundskeeper at the far end of the property. The man appeared to be Eastern European. From a distance, I heard Serafina's voice. It was completely different. Gone was the soft, elegant accent of the New York upper crust. In its place was a hard, clipped, and authoritative tone, with inflections I couldn't place. The moment she saw me approaching, a magical transformation occurred. She smiled brightly, her voice becoming melodic once more. "Oh, Chloe, just a little trouble with the rose bushes. Sometimes you have to speak their language for them to get the message." The explanation seemed plausible, but the transition was so fast, so seamless, it sent a ripple of unease through me. Then there was the matter of the scar. I brought a small wedding gift to her room and caught her changing. Her back was to me, and for a split second before she could slip on her silk robe, I saw it, a long, thin, white scar running down her left shoulder blade. It wasn't a small mark. It was the remnant of a serious injury. She turned, saw my gaze, and immediately smiled graciously. "Oh, this old thing," she said, her hand gently covering her shoulder. "A silly horseback riding accident from my teens. I was always such a clumsy girl." The story was perfect. A rich girl with high society hobbies, but her reflex to hide it was too fast, too instinctual. That night, when we were alone in our room, I told Liam about these strange occurrences. I expected him to brush it off, to tell me I was overthinking things. But Liam just listened in silence, his expression hardening. He sat on the edge of the bed, looking out the window where the silvery moonlight danced on the ocean. "Chloe," he began, his voice low and thoughtful. 2 years ago, at the hospital, I treated a patient, a very successful female CEO who lost nearly her entire fortune in a romance scam. She told me about a young, incredibly charming man who came into her life. He knew everything about her, from her favorite wine to her childhood dreams. He made her feel completely and utterly seen. And Liam paused, turning to look directly into my eyes. My patient said there was one thing she'd never forget. When they went swimming, she saw a long white scar on his left shoulder. He also claimed it was from a fall from a horse. "Chloe, it could be a coincidence. But this pattern, it's alarmingly familiar." Liam's words hung in the quiet room, heavier and more menacing than any darkness outside. Coincidence, a word too small to calm the storm that was beginning to rage inside me. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to protect my brother's happiness, to believe in the perfect world Serafina had painted. But the other part, the part that trusted my husband and trusted the logic and experience of a doctor who had seen the worst of human tragedy, was screaming in silence. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of that white scar on Serafina's tanned back reappeared, superimposed over Liam's story of the ruined woman. The next day, the day before the wedding, the air should have been filled with joy and excitement. Instead, for me, it was veiled in a fog of suspicion. Every smile, every word from Serafina now passed through a filter in my mind. I watched her, not as a sister-in-law, but as a reluctant investigator. And I decided to seek out Isabella, the bridesmaid with the perpetually frightened look. I found her sitting alone by the pool, pretending to read a magazine, but her eyes were vacant. I approached, starting with a casual greeting. When I sat down, she jumped. "Isabella," I began, trying to keep my voice natural. "I hear your family is from Miami, too. I've always wanted to visit." The moment I mentioned Miami, something shifted in her face. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Her eyes darted around as if looking for an escape route, and the hand holding her glass began to tremble. "Oh, yes," she stammered. We used to be, but not anymore." "Really? I thought you and Serafina were best friends from your time there," I pressed, my eyes fixed on her. No, she said, waving her hands dismissively, her voice an octave higher. "We met later, through other friends, in New York. I don't know much about her life in Miami." The answer sounded rehearsed, a denial that was too quick, too forceful. She shot to her feet, making an excuse about needing to check on the bridesmaid dresses, and practically fled from me. That reaction was clearer than any confession. Isabella was hiding something, and she was terrified. Meanwhile, Liam wasn't sitting still. Throughout the day, I saw him on a series of short, intense phone calls. He paced the lawn, his voice low and urgent, completely different from his usual calls about hospital matters. He was taking action. His suspicion had turned into a covert investigation. It wasn't until that evening after the rehearsal dinner, when we were back in our room, that Liam told me everything. "I couldn't let it go, Chloe," he said, his face set with determination. "I called an old friend. He's a top cybersecurity expert, works for a firm that specializes in high-tech fraud. I told him everything, from the odd things you noticed to the story of my former patient. I asked for his help." "You're investigating my future sister-in-law?" I asked, a mix of fear and relief swirling inside me. "I'm trying to protect your brother," Liam answered firmly. "My friend said that if this is a professional operation, their tracks will definitely be online. Just one fake name, one IP address, or an old email account could unravel a whole network. He promised to run some checks and get back to me as soon as he could." We waited. Every minute felt like an eternity. The party outside was still loud, the music still playing. But our world had shrunk to the tense silence within our room. And then, about 2 hours later, Liam's phone buzzed. He put it on the speaker. The voice of his friend on the other end was rushed, foregoing any greeting. "Liam, where are you? Listen carefully. This is much worse than we thought. I ran a scan on the estate's Wi-Fi network. It's not just some cheap keylogger." His friend paused for a second to breathe, and in that instant, I felt my heart stop. The entire network is compromised. It's a ghost network. Every device that connects to it is being monitored in real time. I'm talking about everything: phones, laptops, security cameras. I've found traces of an extremely sophisticated spyware, the kind only major cybercrime organizations use. Liam, your friend, your wife's brother, isn't dealing with a romance scammer. He's walking into a trap set by true professionals. In that moment, the lavish suite in the Hamptons was no longer a luxury retreat. It had become a glass cage, and we were specimens under observation. Every word, every secret, every plan we made could have been laid bare to an enemy we didn't even know existed. The truth was no longer a vague intuition. It was cold, hard data, undeniable digital proof being transmitted through Liam's phone. My fear no longer came from the strange things I had seen, but from what I couldn't see, an invisible entity that was listening, watching, and waiting. "We have to tell Ethan," I blurted out, my voice cracking. "Right now. The wedding is tomorrow morning. We can't let him walk into that." Liam nodded, his face resolute. "You're right. There's no more time for hesitation." We found Ethan in the game room, shooting pool with a few of his groomsmen, their laughter echoing. Seeing him so carefree and happy felt like a punch to the gut. We were about to shatter his perfect world on the eve of the biggest day of his life. Liam gave me a look, and I called Ethan out into the hallway, making up an excuse about a private family matter. Ethan's expression shifted from cheerful to annoyed at our seriousness. "What is it? You two look like you've seen a ghost." "Ethan," Liam began, his voice calm and steady. "What we're about to say is going to be hard to hear. But you have to trust us. We have proof that Serafina isn't who she says she is." Ethan's reaction was exactly what we'd feared. He burst out laughing, a laugh full of disbelief and anger. "Are you two kidding me? Jealous that I found happiness, Chloe? Or do you think she's too good to be true, Liam? Don't ruin my wedding with this nonsense." "This isn't a joke, Ethan," I said, my voice trembling but my gaze firm. "Just hear us out." The scar, the change in her voice, Isabella's terrified behavior. "That's all circumstantial crap," Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. "Then what about this?" Liam said, his tone sharp, cutting through Ethan's anger. "The entire Wi-Fi system in this house has been infected with professional-grade spyware. Every device is being monitored. This isn't a guess, Ethan. This is information from a cybersecurity expert, confirmed 10 minutes ago. Do you think it's a coincidence that your fiancé shows up and our family's security is breached by a tool used by criminal organizations?" Liam showed Ethan his phone, displaying the email exchange with his expert friend, full of technical terms, but with an unmistakable message. "Compromised network, sophisticated spyware. Recommend immediate disconnect." The anger on Ethan's face slowly dissolved, replaced by confusion. He stared at the phone screen, then looked up at us. He wanted to argue, but Liam's ironclad logic left no room. "But why?" he whispered, his voice beginning to fail him. "She loves me." Watching my brother crumble broke my heart. I stepped forward and took his hand. "Ethan, the woman you love might not exist. She's a perfectly crafted role. And worse, she isn't just here for money. She's here to destroy us." We decided we had to tell our parents. The three of us walked into the oak-paneled library where my father, David, was reading with a glass of whiskey. My mother was there too. After hearing the entire story, from my observations and Liam's connections to the irrefutable proof of the network breach, my mother began to weep silently. As for my father, after a moment of stunned silence, his face hardened. The disappointment of being deceived quickly gave way to a cold rage and a terrifying resolve. He was not a man to be trifled with. "We are not calling the police," my father declared after a frightening silence. "Not yet. If we raise the alarm, they'll disappear like ghosts and erase every track. They've been watching us, so now we're going to turn the tables." He looked at us, his eyes like those of a master investor calculating his next move. Liam, you were right. We have to set a trap. That girl and her accomplices are waiting for something. A transfer, a signature. We're going to give them what they want. And so, right there in the library at midnight, the plan was forged. It was bold and full of risk. The next morning, instead of a wedding, there would be an emergency family meeting. My father would announce that he had decided, as a surprise wedding gift, to transfer a large portion of the family trust into a new joint account under Ethan and Seraphina's names. The bait was set. We would pretend to walk straight into their trap, while a much larger one of our own was slowly closing around them. That night was the longest of my life. We had to return to the party, to smile, to raise a glass to a marriage we knew was a fraudulent play. Every time I looked at Seraphina, I no longer saw a beautiful bride. I saw a predator hiding behind a perfect mask, her eyes scanning the room like a wolf sizing up its flock. My father, David, spoke with her, his voice perfectly casual, discussing the final details for the morning meeting. My poor brother Ethan had to play the part of the happy groom, dancing with his fiancée while his heart must have been shattering into a million pieces. Watching him then, I understood that courage isn't the absence of fear, but facing your most terrifying fear without flinching. We were all actors in our own play, and the final act would begin at dawn. The next morning, the wedding day, sunlight streamed across the estate, glinting off the dew on the white roses that decorated everything. A cruel irony. A beautiful day for an event that would never happen. At 9 a.m. sharp, my family was assembled in the library. My father sat in the master chair behind his desk, his face a neutral mask. My mother sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly. Ethan stood by the window, staring out at the ocean, his back straight but rigid. Liam and I sat on the sofa, silent, ready. The air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The door opened, and Seraphina entered. With her was the man playing the part of her Eastern European uncle. Today, she wasn't in a wedding dress, but an elegant white business suit, looking every bit the part of a future matriarch. She wore a perfectly pitched look of concern. What's going on? Why the early meeting? Everyone looks so serious. My father cleared his throat. Seraphina, sit down. I have a surprise for you two. She sat, her eyes flashing with a skillfully concealed glint of curiosity and greed. Dad has been thinking, my father continued, his voice even. And I've decided not to wait for the will to take effect. Today, I'm instructing my lawyer to begin the process of transferring a significant portion of the family trust into a new account to be co-owned by you and Ethan. Consider it my wedding gift. There it was. The bait was cast. I saw Seraphina's smile become almost impossible to contain. She brought a hand to her mouth in a gesture of fake astonishment. Dad, I don't know what to say. This is just overwhelming. I just need you two to sign a few preliminary documents, my father said, pushing a stack of fake papers toward her. As Seraphina reached out to take the file, a sharp click echoed through the room. It was the sound of Liam locking the library door. Seraphina froze, looking up. The smile on her lips hardened. What is this? My father leaned back in his chair, his own smile vanishing, replaced by a look as cold and sharp as a razor. The game is over, he said, his voice a low hiss. Katya. The moment her real name was spoken, the transformation happened. It was as if an invisible mask had just shattered. The grace and elegance vanished. Her shoulders squared defiantly. Her chin jutted out. A cold, cruel smirk played on her lips, and when she spoke, The hard Eastern European accent I had heard before was clear as day. "Well," she said, her gaze shifting from my father to Liam. "So, there is a brain in this foolish family after all. I underestimated you, Doctor." "All of your accomplices have been identified," Liam said, his voice calm but powerful. "The FBI has been tracking you for a long time." "The FBI?" Katya let out a sharp laugh. "You think you can scare me? You have no proof. And if you make a scene, it's the prestigious Reynolds family that will be humiliated in every newspaper. A financial titan outsmarted by a girl. Is that what you want?" She was about to say more, but her uncle suddenly moved. He knocked over a small table and lunged toward Ethan, clearly intending to take him hostage. But he was a step too slow. The two caterers, who had been standing guard outside the door, whom we'd seen all morning, suddenly moved with terrifying speed. They were FBI agents. In a flash, the large man was tackled to the ground, his face pressed into the expensive Persian rug. Seeing her associate captured, Katya didn't hesitate. She threw a large crystal vase in our direction to create a diversion, then bolted for the glass balcony doors. She smashed through them and jumped. Below, a speedboat was waiting with its engine running, a well-planned escape route. But as her feet hit the dock, another team of agents swarmed from beneath the water and from the nearby bushes. The chase was over faster than it began. I looked through the shattered glass doors and saw the woman who was almost my sister-in-law, the woman who had charmed my entire family, now in handcuffs, her golden hair soaked and matted. The perfection was gone, leaving only a cornered criminal, her eyes filled with hatred and defeat. The play was truly over. After the FBI vehicle disappeared down the long drive, taking Katya and the nightmare she created with it, a strange silence fell over the library. It wasn't the silence of peace, but of a storm's aftermath. Broken glass crunched underfoot, the overturned table lay abandoned, and the air still smelled of betrayal. The five of us, my family, just stood there, looking at each other. No one said a word, but we all understood that the Reynolds family had just fought a war and survived, but not without scars. The weeks that followed were a blur of debriefings, interviews, and shocking revelations. The FBI agents explained the full scale of the operation. Katya Petrova did not act alone. She was a key player in an Eastern European crime syndicate that targeted wealthy families not with violence, but with a far more sophisticated weapon, psychology. They didn't just want money. They sought out families with strong emotional foundations, knowing that love and trust were the easiest doors to pry open. In a New York apartment Katya had rented under a false name, they found detailed dossiers on dozens of families, including ours. They contained everything: habits, hobbies, fears, weaknesses, past relationships. They had studied us like scientists studying a specimen, looking for the cracks to slip through. The ultimate goal wasn't just to drain a trust fund. It was to embed themselves deeper, using my family's reputation to launder money and gathering sensitive information through their spyware network to blackmail us for years to come. We weren't a score. We were their long-term investment. The truth about Isabella also came to light. Her family in Miami had indeed been previous victims. They had lost a significant amount of money, and more importantly, had been threatened with harm to their children if they went to the police. Isabella's presence at the wedding was one of Katya's cruelest moves, a way to both control Isabella and to remind her of the consequences of disobedience. As time passed, the visible wounds began to heal. The estate was sold, the wedding gifts returned, and the name Serafina was erased from our lives. But the invisible scars took longer, especially for Ethan. He moved back in with our parents for the first few months, struggling with the fact that the love he believed was his destiny was actually a meticulously crafted performance. He had to confront not just the pain of being deceived, but the guilt of nearly dragging his entire family into ruin. But my family was there for him. We didn't let him face it alone. 6 months later, Ethan decided to leave New York, moving to Chicago to be closer to me and Liam. He found a new job, rented a small apartment, and began to rebuild his life from the rubble. He joined a rock climbing club, finding joy in simple physical challenges, where the only truths were the mountain and his own strength. A year after that fateful day, we were all gathered around the dinner table at my house. Ethan was smiling again. A real, genuine smile. He talked about his new friends, about an exciting project at his firm. The scars were still there, but they no longer defined him. Looking at my family, I realized a profound lesson. That horrifying ordeal, which had tried to tear us apart, had ultimately made us closer than ever. It taught my father that caution is never wasted. It taught my mother that the strength of family can heal the deepest wounds. It taught Ethan that his worth wasn't defined by who he loved, but by how he stood back up after falling. And it taught me that the world is full of perfectly polished surfaces, but beneath the veneer, the truth always has cracks. Tiny fissures that only intuition can feel. Trusting your gut isn't paranoia, it's a form of wisdom. Verifying information isn't an insult, it's an act of protection. And real love, unlike the counterfeit Katya was selling, doesn't happen in a flash. It's built from 1,000 small moments of honesty, of trust earned over time, and the courage to face the truth together, no matter how ugly it is. My family was targeted because we trusted each other, but in the end, it was that same trust, combined with caution, that saved us.